Pep Guardiola built Manchester City into the greatest club team English football has ever seen. 20 trophies in 10 years. An empire that felt untouchable. And then he walked away in June 2026, handing the keys to Enzo Maresca, a manager who just won 2 trophies with Chelsea. The transition was an immediate disaster. While Manchester City paid £17 million just to bring Maresca in, they lost something worth infinitely more. The foundation of Guardiola's entire system. The one player who made it all work. And the man who shaped his philosophy? Pep Guardiola himself. 24 seconds. That's how long it took for Enzo Maresca's Manchester City era to collapse. 24 seconds into the 2026 FA Community Shield against Arsenal, Riccardo Calafiori scored. The floodgates opened. Arsenal buried City 3-0 in Cardiff, and Maresca stood in the technical area, pacing and gesturing exactly like his mentor used to. Except Guardiola made it look like genius. Maresca looked lost. Martin Keown, former Arsenal defender, didn't hold back. He said Maresca should be embarrassed by the lifeless body language of his team. Arsenal fans chanted, "You're getting sacked in the morning." The brutal reality is they weren't wrong to wonder. This was no ordinary loss. This was the joint heaviest defeat for a Manchester City manager in their debut competitive match in 120 years. The last time it happened? 1906. Harry Newbold lost 4-1 to Arsenal. Maresca suffered a similar 3-goal margin humiliation, and he did it against the same club. But you can't blame tactics for what happened that day. You can't blame formations or substitutions or motivational speeches. The real damage was done weeks earlier, in private conversations. Rodri. The name you need to remember. Spain's captain. The man who dragged his country to a 1-0 extra-time victory over Argentina in the 2026 World Cup final on July 19th. The tournament's Golden Ball winner. The midfielder who completed 101 passes out of 106 in that final, dictating tempo, cutting off attacks, controlling the game like a conductor. He was the engine of Manchester City's dominance. Every single one of Guardiola's tactical masterpieces in recent years ran through him. And in mid-August 2026, Barcelona paid €75 million to take him away. Think about that. The one player Guardiola couldn't replace. The one piece of the puzzle that made everything else fit. Gone. Just like that. The story takes a darker turn. Pep Guardiola left Manchester City and actively helped dismantle the team he built. After Rodri won the World Cup, Guardiola called him. Privately. And he told Rodri to choose Barcelona over Real Madrid. Real Madrid wanted him. Real Madrid was pushing hard. But Guardiola stepped in and advised the man who powered his empire to join Barcelona instead. Why would he do that? Maybe he believed Barcelona was the better fit. Maybe he wanted to protect Rodri from the pressure of moving to Real Madrid. Or maybe, just maybe, Guardiola knew exactly what losing former Manchester City midfielder Rodri would do to the club, and he no longer cared because it wasn't his problem anymore. On August 17th, 2026, Rodri landed at Barcelona's El Prat airport. Reporters swarmed him. He smiled and said playing for Barcelona was a dream. He was relieved the intense negotiation days were over. And back in Manchester, Enzo Maresca was left staring at a gaping hole in the center of his midfield, wondering how he was supposed to fill it. Manchester City scrambled. They explored signing Chelsea's Enzo Fernandez for £120 million, a huge gamble on a player who'd never operated in Rodri's role, who'd never controlled games the way Rodri did. Desperation move. Panic buy. Call it what you want, but it screamed one thing. They had no plan for this. Rodri was not the only departure. The entire core of Guardiola's team vanished that summer. John Stones? Gone. Contract expired. Bernardo Silva? Same. Manuel Akanji? Joined Inter Milan. The spine of the squad, the players who understood Guardiola's system instinctively, all disappeared at once. Maresca took charge of a squad that had dominated England for nearly a decade. Subscribe to the channel, and you'll start noticing how many empires crumble the second the architect walks away. Guardiola left and took the blueprint with him. Rewind to June 2024. Enzo Maresca gets appointed manager of Chelsea. He's coming off a championship title with Leicester, known for his tactical intelligence, his ability to organize possession-based football. People call him a Guardiola disciple. And in his first season at Chelsea, he delivers. May 28th, 2025, Chelsea defeats Real Betis 4-1 to win the UEFA Conference League, Maresca's first major trophy. Then on July 13th, 2025, Chelsea wins the inaugural expanded 32-team FIFA Club World Cup, beating Paris Saint-Germain 3-0 in the final. 2 trophies, a manager on the rise. But something was happening behind the scenes. Maresca was already looking past Chelsea. He was in secret negotiations with Manchester City, talks about replacing Guardiola. And when Chelsea found out, the relationship collapsed. January 1st, 2026, New Year's Day. Maresca and Chelsea part ways. Officially, it's mutual. Behind the scenes, it was reported as a breakdown in relationship. But everyone knows what it really was. Maresca had one eye on Manchester, and Chelsea wasn't going to tolerate that. June 29th, 2026. Manchester City makes it official. Enzo Maresca, 3-year contract. £17 million compensation fee paid to Chelsea just to get him out of his deal. And the football world watches, curious. Can this man really follow Pep Guardiola? Can anyone? The answer came in Cardiff. 3 goals in 90 minutes. A performance so flat, so disjointed, that even neutral observers started questioning whether Manchester City had made a fatal mistake. Arsenal pressed high, and City had no answer. Arsenal attacked in waves, and City's midfield couldn't cope. Because the man who used to break up those waves, who used to turn defense into attack with one perfectly weighted pass, was preparing to fly to Barcelona. Guardiola's former empire relied on more than tactics. It was built on Rodri's ability to read the game, to position himself in spaces other players didn't even see, to recycle possession under pressure. He wasn't flashy. He didn't score 20 goals a season. But remove him, and the entire structure collapses. And Guardiola knew that better than anyone, which makes his advice to Rodri feel less like mentorship and more like sabotage. If this is hitting different, take a second to hit like. It genuinely helps the algorithm show this to more people who need to see it. The sad part is, Maresca is a good manager. He proved it at Leicester. He proved it at Chelsea. But he walked into an impossible situation. Guardiola left him a team in transition, key players departing, and the most irreplaceable midfielder in world football about to jump ship. And then Guardiola himself helped push that midfielder out the door. This is calculated cruelty. Guardiola spent a decade building Manchester City into a machine. And when he left, he made sure nobody else could run it the same way. Whether that was intentional or not doesn't matter. The result is the same. Manchester City, the team that won 4 consecutive Premier League titles, looked like strangers on the pitch in Cardiff. No chemistry, no control, no identity. Barcelona paid €75 million, but Rodri left for a different reason. He went with Pep Guardiola's blessing after discussing his desire for a new challenge. He went because Hansi Flick, Barcelona's manager, called him and painted a vision of what he could achieve in Catalonia. He went because after carrying Spain to a World Cup, after completing 101 out of 105 passes in the biggest game of his life, he wanted to test himself somewhere new. And Manchester City had nothing to counter that pitch. No Guardiola. No vision. Just Enzo Maresca, a man trying to hold together a dynasty that was already crumbling. The transfer market doesn't care about sentiment. Manchester City explored Enzo Fernandez, a £120 million lifeline. But even if they sign him, even if they rebuild the midfield, the damage is done. The aura is gone. The fear opponents used to feel facing Manchester City? Evaporated. Arsenal proved that in Cardiff in 90 minutes, 3 goals, 0 response. And the football world took note. Maresca's first press conference after the Community Shield was painful to watch. He talked about needing time, about implementing his system, about building chemistry. All true, all reasonable. But none of it changes the fact that he inherited a poisoned chalice. Guardiola left at the perfect time. He won 20 major trophies, left on top, and handed the mess to someone else. And then he made sure that mess got worse by guiding Rodri to Barcelona. Some will say Guardiola was just being a good mentor, helping a former player make the right career choice. But mentors don't actively undermine the club they just left. Mentors don't advise the one player their successor can't afford to lose to pick Barcelona over Real Madrid. That's not mentorship. That's a controlled demolition. And Maresca? He's standing in the rubble, trying to figure out how to rebuild. He's got a 3-year contract. He's got Manchester City's backing, at least for now. But he's also got a 120-year-old record tied to his name after one match. He's got a midfield in crisis. And he's got the shadow of Pep Guardiola hanging over every decision he makes. The empire Guardiola built took a decade to construct. Maresca watched it begin to collapse just 24 seconds in. And the man who built it? He's somewhere else now, working as a global ambassador, watching from a distance. So was this the natural end of a dynasty? Or did Guardiola make sure nobody else could replicate his success? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if any of this stuck with you, hit like and subscribe. There are many more stories hiding in plain sight.